Moms of Reddit, what do you know about your child that you will never tell to him or her? Story number 1. Have a daughter in college. Her first summer back home, I went to wash all of her clothes she brought back. As a college girl, it was at least 4 loads. As I sorted her clothes before washing them, out tumbled 4 butt plugs wrapped in a bag. They were huge. Like, huge. So I carefully wrapped them back up and slid them back into her things. Story 2. I was, or am, a parental figure to my orphaned younger siblings. There's something I'll never tell my sister. When she was going through a terrible period as a drug addict, late teens, she stole her mom's wallet, and all of her mom's credit cards and bank accounts had to be cancelled and changed. Our mom was in bad health, but had a huge life insurance policy she had gotten almost 15 years prior when she was healthier. When the accounts were cancelled, she forgot to change the auto payments for the insurance. It was declined and subsequently cancelled. She couldn't get another policy anymore. She had too many health problems. My mom told me about all this in confidence. Less than 2 years later, our mom died. Everyone thought she had a life insurance policy to help us, but she didn't. She left absolutely nothing. I'm the only one who knows why. It would kill my sister to know her addiction cost us several $100,000. The recovery from her mom's death was really hard. Siblings moved in with me, etc. And the insurance money could have saved us a long period of financial and emotional struggle. Edit. My sister is an incredibly kind, loving, and loyal person. She was a teenager at the time and going through a horrible period in her life regarding untreated mental illness. She came out of it and is one of my favorite people in the world. That incident is the only thing she's done to hurt or screw anyone over. She was just young and hurting and naive. It will never be worth telling her. She's been through enough. We all have. I will never have more resentment than love for my little sis. Story 3. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this elsewhere. Still relevant. I was turning my daughter's mattress when I came across a notebook full of female nudes. She must have been putting it together for some time. Not wanting to embarrass her or violate her trust, I finished flipping the mattress and put the notebook back just as I'd found it. That was years ago, and she still has no idea. Story 4. When my daughter was 3, she bonked my mom in the head with a toy, as 3-year-olds are prone to do. My mom had a blood clotting disease and a blood clot in her head about a week later and eventually died from it. I'm not sure anyone but me has put 2 and 2 together, and I aim to keep it that way. My daughter had no idea what she was doing because she was 3. She would probably literally kill herself if she found this out, since she's a hair bipolar and gets a really dark place with too much bad news. My mom never seemed to put 2 and 2 together. She had the disease for 13 years and most people only live 6, so she felt very blessed. My wife would be devastated to know this, even though she knows I don't think she connected them. She probably doesn't remember my daughter bonking my mom on the head anymore, so I'll never tell them, and that's okay. Story 5. Dad, she ate cat poop. We had a very long-haired cat at the time. Rip, little buddy. Apparently, some poop got stuck to his fur only to fall out upstairs where the baby was crawling around and found it. 5 years later, she's still a normal, happy, and healthy child. Sorry, sweetheart. Story 6. I saw my flip cam was missing from the table I put it on, and went to look for it in my 11-year-old son's room. I checked to see if there was anything recorded, and there was. He was masturbating to a magazine of mine advertising women's clothing and underwear, and commenting about which girl he would like to put his penis in. I put the camera back, and when he came home, I asked him to bring it downstairs if he had it. I gave him time to delete the videos, and he has no idea I'm now hiding my flip cam in ladies' clothing magazines. He will never know I saw his tiny boner being manipulated to images of plus-sized women. Story 7. I caught my son once pretending to milk himself into a bucket while taking a bath. He was only around 4 years old, so I don't think he remembers, but he was hovering over a bucket and squeezing his penis. I asked him what he was doing, and he told me he was pretending his penis was an udder, and he was trying to get milk. I said, "Okay, honey," and slowly closed the door. The end. Story 8. I will never, ever tell my daughter that when she was 1 week old, I accidentally threw her across the room onto a wood floor. It was about 2 a.m. I was breastfeeding her in the living room, and a huge spider crawling on my arm. The whole new baby late at night thing made me stupid. So my reaction was to use the arm I was holding the baby in to get the spider off my other arm. My little girl went flying. It was horrible. She was fine though, completely unharmed. Just kind of pissed me off. No one tell her. Story 9. Years ago we had an awesome cat named Chosen One. We all loved this cat, but especially my oldest son who, at the time, was just beginning to drive. He was about 17 or so. One day my son was leaving the house to go somewhere, and when he left he reached down and gave Chosen a little love, and out the door he went. Unbeknownst to him, the cat had followed him out the door, and for some reason the cat must have run under the car. Nobody actually witnessed this event, so we're speculating on what exactly happened. So my son drives off, and a little while later, I go outside to find Chosen laying on the driveway curled up in a ball, dead. We think the kid he ran under the car or was in front of the tire or something, and when my son drove away, he ran over Chosen and killed him. We were all pretty upset, of course, and when my son came home, we told him Chosen had been hit by a car on the road and died. We never told him, and never will. Now we're pretty sure he was the one that killed the cat. He'd blame himself and forever feel guilty about killing his favorite cat. Story 10. My daughter is not biologically my husband's. She was conceived with donor sperm, hubby is sterile. I want to tell her because I think it's fair just for medical reasons alone, especially now considering she was born with a major heart defect. Hubby doesn't want to tell her, might not ever. I don't think it would matter, but I'd be devastated if it made her think less of my husband. She's only been with us a month, but he loves her so much, it would crush him. Anyway, yeah, that's our secret for her. Story 11. He was conceived after we got lost trying to find a Halloween party at a friend's new place. We ended up just going home, but as I was already in the French maid costume, it made perfect sense to get drunk and forget the birth control. I don't imagine we will ever tell him he was conceived inside a French maid costume. Actually, who am I kidding? We will totally bust this story out for his future spouse. Story 12. When my first wife was 4 months pregnant, she was diagnosed with stage 3-4 breast cancer. At 18 weeks, the doctor gave her a few choices. Her best chance of survival was to abort the baby and have aggressive chemo. We talked about it, and she decided to try and carry our son to term. They delivered our son healthy about 6 weeks early. She died about 5 months after he was born. I have since remarried, and he's now almost 18. I don't plan on telling him that she saved him at her expense. It was a tough time, and I don't blame him, and never have. Edit. Thanks for the gold, my first. I've been a lurker for a few years, but felt the need to tell my story. Now standing in central London, tears streaming. Anyway, we're all happy and well adjusted now. I will think long and hard about how to tell him the truth. Thanks for all the nice words. Edit 2. I'm overwhelmed by the comments and advice. I've been in London in meetings all morning, and I have been useless at my job today. I just wanted to address a few things here. After her mastectomy and a lengthy biopsy, she was found to have an extremely aggressive type of breast cancer. In fact, we later found out it had spread considerably, and the treatment would have been in vain, even if we had aborted. Her life expectancy would probably have been less than 2 years. We made the choice to keep him before we knew this. Invasive treatments, an MRI, or multiple x-rays would have put some risk, my son, so we took a choice. He knows she died of cancer, and he knows it was soon after he was born, but not the details. He never knew his mom, and he does not grieve for her. It's cold but true. She has written to him a number of letters, the first of which he gets at 18, the next at 21, and the final one when he gets married. They are sealed and private. I have no wish to open them, but it remains possible that she will detail what happened, although I think it's unlikely, as before she died she made me promise to protect him from the pain of her illness and decision. Story 13. Dad here. I know what he's doing with the butter, and that's why I buy the store brand for him to make a toast at night and leave my good butter alone. For God's sake, buy him coconut oil. Butter is just nasty, man. Story 14. That I found a treasure hunt he had created as a surprise for his girlfriend on their anniversary. One of the clues was that she should go to the place where he first fucked her in the ass. I should add, they were both adults when they first met. So whatever they do in their private lives is their business only. But I can never unsee that note. Story 15. I know he injured at least 2 people and injured himself at least once at political rallies that turned into brawls. Some nights he would come home bleeding and with a black eye. He was a boxer, so I thought nothing of it, and I'm sure a few of those were boxing injuries, but I know he was hurt a few times in those political riots. Nearly a decade later, he moved out, and out of the country coincidentally. My husband and I finally decided it was time to pack up his old room and turn his bedroom into something else. We found a few things that linked him to local fascist groups, just a few scraps he probably forgot to take with him. One of those things was an old newspaper clipping where I can clearly see him delivering a hard punch to the face of a political opponent. He's in a disguise, but I still recognize the clothes he was wearing. Then there was another picture from the same article, where the guy he punched is laying on the ground and my son is getting ready to hit someone else. After we gathered everything incriminating, my husband and I decided to burn the evidence he left behind. Nothing could be gained by keeping those things. The articles were quite old, and my son moved to a new country that doesn't have his brand of fascism. My son followed a specific local type of fascism. Edit. Because so many people are asking, we're from a southern European country. It's been bad here for a while, and I'm worried that more of our young will turn to fascism. They always hear their parents or grandparents talking about their youth when the country was ruled by a dictator. We hear about how easy it was back then and how we had zero worries. The young people now need to worry about unemployment, debt, a dwindling population, and the tensions with immigrants. We never had to worry about any of those things. Then from their families and from school, they learn about how great we used to be. Then they step outside and see how far we've fallen. We used to be great, but now everyone sees Southern European as a liability. I think it's easy for them to turn to fascism in an attempt to reclaim that greatness. I miss those years, but I think fascism and dictatorship should be left in the past. Story 16. Sort of a meta thing, but my mom didn't tell me until right before she died that she knew I was destined to never hold a job or live an ordinary life. Her psychiatric background had long before determined I was schizotypical and prone to a pattern of atypical depression. She never told me until the end because she knew how important it was to sort myself out, rather than just be given a diagnosis. She told me that she was never disappointed in me and that even if I had problems, there'd still be a future for me. She was proud that I'd taken on the issues that I had so openly and never given up. Years later, I haven't improved much, but her encouragement and confidence in me still linger. Whenever I'm in a truly bad place, she's still there in my head giving me comfort. Love you, Mom. Story 17. Not a mom here. When I was around 5, my aunt walked into the room while I had the nozzle of a bicycle pump on the tip of my penis. I was trying to pump air inside of me to see if I would swell up like a balloon. I didn't know this until my mother told me about it a few years ago when we were having a chat about funny things that happened in the past. Luckily, we do not live close to a bridge because I seriously thought about jumping. How could she think that this would be funny to me? I was mortified. Story 18. When I was 16, I found this stash of beer in our basement fridge. Miller High Life, I think. I drank some and I thought it was utterly disgusting. Not like acquired taste bad, but rather, what the fuck? How do people drink this? My stomach is literally on fire. Hid the bottles to throw away at a later date, crossed beer off my list of things I liked. Forget about said beer bottles. One day, I remember, and go to look for them where I hid them. Instead, a note. Foul Christ, those beers were at least 8 years old. We removed them from Grandma's fridge when we were cleaning her house. I won't tell your dad. Hope your first beer was memorable, Mom. Story 19. That I wanted to give him the first station for a couple of weeks. I didn't tell anyone until he was 2 weeks old because I thought there was something wrong with him and me. I didn't think I loved him, and I was so ashamed. I ended up telling my husband in desperation one night, and he snatched my son away, telling him that he'd find a mommy who actually loved him. Neither of us knew it was severe postpartum depression. I thought I was incapable of that love, and my husband thought I was a monster. I'm still battling the PPD and anxiety a year later, but I even now can't believe how much I love him. I love him so much that it hurts. I'll never tell my son about that horrible night, but I will tell him that depression and anxiety are never ever shameful. Story 20. I will never tell my daughter that she almost was aborted very early in the pregnancy at my request. My wife had just given birth to our son, and about 4 months later I had the strangest dream about her giving birth again. When I woke up, I asked her if she was pregnant. She laughingly denied it and told me I was crazy, but I forced her to take a test, and it was positive. We were still new parents and were just getting used to having a baby in the house. I was a wreck. I barely slept from caring for my son all night, every night. The thought of having another baby absolutely destroyed me. I started discussing with her the possibility of an abortion, and while she was initially against the whole idea, she eventually made an appointment at a clinic at my request. The night before we were to go, I was discussing the topic on a message board called Lou, which was a subset of game FAQs back when it was worth visiting. I explained everything in a post, and read each and every single response. It was such an enlightening experience to see a massive amount of losers who previously only cared about posting Lushi truly write some eye-opening and heartfelt replies that really opened my eyes as to what I was doing. And was it due to fear or was it a well-thought decision? Needless to say, in the morning, I asked my wife what time her appointment was for, and after she told me, I looked her in the eyes and said, "Cancel it. We can do this." My daughter just turned 10 last month. I have no idea how I would have gotten through some very tough times in my life without her. She's such a beautiful and free spirit, and the fact that I almost deprived the world of having her in it makes me want to smash my own face into a wall repeatedly. I'm honestly fighting back tears right now just facing this again, and it has been a long time since I've thought about it. I'm sorry that I almost killed you because I was scared, Ree. You'll never know this, but you're one of the best things that have ever happened to me. And I hate myself for almost ending your life before you had a chance to live it. Story 21. This is technically not a never tell him, but it's going to be at least a decade before we share this info. My son started out in the womb as a triplet. The other 2 babies were sick, so I underwent a multi-fetal pregnancy reduction at 14 weeks, sacrificing his brother and sister to save his life. My son knows he has an older, stillborn brother. He's grown up knowing about him and loves him as much as a little kid can love someone who died before them. We're not afraid for our son to know that we chose to end his siblings' lives. But at age 5, we don't want him to know that his life was at one point in jeopardy. I used to be a child and adolescent social worker, so I know that kids this young understand and are okay with the concept of death. But the idea that they themselves could die young, die tragically, is something that could shake them up. I also don't want him to experience survivor's guilt until he's old enough to process and work through those feelings. So it will be at least a decade before we tell him. So yeah, it doesn't quite fit the OP, but it's a rare enough situation that I thought people might be interested in hearing about it. Story 22. Yeah, well, the shower drain was constantly clogged up with slime and I cleaned it out with my bare hands. Now I realized why you love to take showers so often. Thanks Reddit for letting me know the truth. And hey, just letting you all know that your mom is a Redditor these days. Clean up the shower drain yourself. Story 23. I am a daughter of Reddit. However, my mother has been hiding something huge from me all my life, but she doesn't know that I actually know. 3 years before I was born, my mother had a daughter and gave her up for adoption at the age of 9 months. I was then later born in 1993 and stayed with my biological mother. All of my extended family, stepbrothers and sisters, everyone but me basically knew about my half-sister. When I was 13, my stepbrother told me that my mom had a baby before me, but gave it up for adoption. I didn't believe him as he had a reputation for telling porkies. A few years later, at the age of 18, I came across some pictures in my mother's knicker drawer of a baby. Being curious, I looked further and found an adoption certificate. I'm now 22 and my mother still doesn't know that I know. I think I've left it too long to tell her now. So yeah, sorry if the grammar and spelling were terrible. I'm dyslexic.